Okay, recording is started. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Smith. I'm on the MCSL board, and as of this year, I'm in charge of automation. So it's really gone to my head. So you'll have to put up with me. And also helping me out is Tom Lang, also on the board, and Karen McCannon, who is right there in that little box. And Karen's helping out. Anyway. Okay, so this is the MCSL automation training. I assume most of you are relatively new.
Remember, you can only stay on 10 minutes.
So it's relatively new to automation training. So I'm going to cover it pretty much from soup to nuts. If you have any questions while we're going along, if you could type them in the chat and make sure it goes to everyone, then either I'll notice it or Karen or Tom or somebody can answer the question. But if you have a question, let us know at the time instead of letting us get too far gone from where we are. So the purpose of the automation staff at the meets is to run the meets, get all the times in for all the swimmers, score the meets, and get the information up on the MCSL website. And we'll go through each of those things in turn. And so there's basically 3 pieces of software that you'll need to interact with. The first 2 you'll definitely have to interact with, and then if you're a division automation coordinator, we'll show you how I'll show you how the division automation stuff works. It's very simple. And Division B, if anyone's here from Division B and no one has stepped up as automation coordinator, I hope at the end of this meeting I've convinced one of you that it's super easy to do and you will volunteer to help us out. But I'll talk about Division B later when we get to automation coordinators. So the first piece of software that you're going to be interacting with is the software that manages the teams, your team. So this manages all the athletes on your team. And this is the thing that lives from week to week. So you set up the team manager database, and we'll discuss the various pieces of software to do that. And then every week, you'll be interacting with your team management software. But the key point here is that it's the same database every week. So you'll be you'll be uploading results to it, and it will accumulate all the results for the whole season. And if you have to update your athletes' information, it'll be in that database. So the pieces of software that are usually used for that, we used to use a piece of software called Team Manager. It still works. Some of you might be using it. Team Manager runs locally on your computer. It does not run in the cloud. There's no website piece associated with it. So it's sort of old school. The other ones are web-based. There's Team Unify and Swimtopia. They're handy because you can sort of outsource the data entry of everyone's names, addresses, ages, birthdays, and whatnot to the parents as they're doing the registration. And that will all get uploaded there. Back in the team manager days, I used to get all the registration forms and I'd have to retype everything in and hope I got all the email addresses correct and all the birthdays right and everything. So if you're using Team Unify or Swimtopia, I'm sure you're familiar with it by now of how to log on and set up registration so that the kids can register or the parents can register the kids. And that's typically, those also integrate with who's swimming at each meet and things like that. But the team management software and the whole team management thing is really on the teams. So you're in charge of managing your team and getting all the information entered into it. And then before a meet, you or the coach or the reps or some combination of you will create all the entries for the meet that's coming up. And I'll discuss what an entry file means. They'll create all the entries for the meet, and then that's how you create who's going to be swimming for each meet that you're entering. And the second piece of software is the meet management software, and that is literally Meet Manager, the software that MCSL supplied that all of you should have a copy of. The thing about Meet Manager is it's only associated with running a single meet. So there'll be a file, a database file for week 1A, and if you're the home team for week 1A, you'll be doing all the things to set up the meet in week 1A, then you'll be preparing for the meet, you'll be running the meet, entering all the times, you'll be producing the results, and then exporting the results from that database. But the important point is that once week 1A is over, you leave that database and you're not going to run it again. And then you'll go on to week 2A, and week 2A will know nothing about week 1A. So it's a blank database at that point. So nothing in Meet Manager carries over week to week. So that's Meet Manager, and we're going to spend most of our time in Meet Manager here. And then there's the MCSL website where we upload the results to, and we'll get to that near the end. Someone says Team Unify looks completely different. They were bought by another company, and now I'm lost on how to input the entry files into an A-meet.
They weren't really bought by another company. NBC Universal is doing some rebranding, but it is still owned by NBC Universal. So the Go Motion Team Unify changeover is still all coming together. The process is still the same. They've just renamed where some things are. At the end of this, if we have some specific Team Unify questions, I can try to help with that, since that's not really covered by the MCSL stuff. So once we get through the automation side for the summits, if there's team specific questions at the end, I can try to help people out.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I was like losing my mind yesterday. So
yeah, no. And then if you guys haven't been using it all year, you haven't seen the change, it was kind of sprung on you and they give you no notice.
I was like, oh no, just when I learned how to, I was feeling comfortable with the way it looked before. So really appreciate that.
So we'll get to that at the end. So let's let Eric go through the meet stuff, and then we'll get to the team stuff at the end.
Thank you.
Someone asked if there are time trials templates, and yeah, it's in the A-meet templates file. Okay, so team management, just very basically, it keeps track of the roster. It allows you to create entries for the upcoming meets. As I said, it has the history of the swimmers, it has all their times and finishes, and it's from this thing that you can generate reports like who are my top swimmers and all those sorts of things. Note that you can't produce any of those reports from Meet Manager because Meet Manager does not know about more than one meet, so it can't tell you who's the fastest this season. It can only give you information about that one meet. And you can also use team management software to keep track of team and pool records, and we'll talk about records in a while. And so Meet Manager, like I've been over, runs the dual meets, Relay Carnival divisionals. You can also use it to run the B meets. But each week after you're done, you have to export the results from Team Manager they somehow have to get uploaded to the website, and then you will need to upload them into your Team Manager software. So as far as automating a meet, your activities for the week usually begin 2 days before the meet. So on Thursday, you'll help the coach or the assistant coaches or reps or whoever does it prepare the initial meet entries. And then typically they'll produce a preliminary lineup, and you'll have the athletes commit or to the meet, and they'll adjust the entries based on who is or isn't showing. When I was doing automation for NCC, I usually was not involved in this at all. The coaches would all manage this themselves, but I was obviously always around to help, and if they had any problems with it. So then the real work starts on Friday. So on Friday, the coaches meet, and ideally the coaches meet in person at the home pool, and they will exchange rosters and entries. Okay. The rosters are a list of all the athletes on your team. It's everyone who could possibly swim, even if they're not swimming. So that's the entire roster of every eligible athlete or every athlete on your team. And so that's in one file, the roster file. And then there's the entries file, and the entries are who is swimming in the meet the next day. So the coaches should swap hard copies of those things, the meet entries and the team rosters. That's important because those are the official entries. So if the entries are exchanged and there's a handwritten change on the entries, then the thing that's handwritten in is the official entry. Hopefully you don't see any of that, but that's the rules say that's the official entry. And then they'll also swap either on a flash drive, although these days it's always done by email, soft copies of the entries and the roster. One point about the swapping things by email, if there's sort of the who goes first problem, which is why it should be done on the printed entries that the coaches exchange, because then they're exchanged at the same time. If you get into just doing it by soft copy, it's theoretically possible that the first team to get them could see the entries and make changes to their entries before they submit them. So ideally, always use the printed copies of these things. But invariably, there'll be some reason why the coaches can't meet, and they'll end up using the soft copies. So as long as everyone agrees that you're using soft copies, that's fine. And then the other thing that has to happen in that when those coaches meet is that the visiting coach has to select whether they want even or odd lanes. And many, many times, probably over half the time when I was setting up a meet on Friday night, I would be sent the entries for both teams and the rosters for both teams, but no one would bother to tell me if the visiting team wanted even or odd lanes, and you'll have to track it down with the visiting coach or whoever you can get in touch with. So those are really the things you have to know. You have to have both entry files, both rosters, and if the visiting team wants evens or odds. In our pool, the visiting team always wanted odds because the even lane had some stair entryway on it, which made it a little weird. So, I mean, I always knew what it was going to be, but you really need to track it down with the visiting coach. And then you'll fire up Meet Manager. I'll show you how to do this in just a second. You import the rosters and the entries for the two teams. You will you'll load records, team and pool records, if applicable. If you're the home team, you probably have your own copy of the pool records, and you probably have your own copy of your team records. You will load those. With any luck, the visiting team will also send you their records, and you can load their records files in also. Although I'd say I had about a 10% success rate of getting records from a visiting team. So they're not required, but they're sort of handy. And then you'll seed the meet by entering who has even or odd lanes. Then you'll do the meet seeding. And then you will print the lane timer cards and the meet program, and I'll walk through how to do that. And then you're basically done for that night. What I always do after I've printed everything out is I'll back up the meet, export a backup of the meet at that stage, send it to the other team's automation person, ask them to load that on their computer, and ask them to bring their computer and their printer to the meet also as a backup. Because I've on more than one occasion had a computer fail during a meet and we had to switch over to a backup computer. And my favorite one of those was when a computer decided to start updating itself to Windows 10 during event 2, and which is a multi-hour thing. So we were able to switch over to actually I was the away team at that, and we were able to switch over to my computer, re-enter event 1, and keep going. But it's important to also have, if you're going to do that, and I cannot stress enough how important I think that is, have the other team also bring their printer, because the last thing you want to be doing is looking for a printer driver while this is all going on. So then you're done for the Friday night work. You've printed out the lane timer cards, you're ready to go with them, you've got the database backed up, and the other team has it. So then the Saturday morning, you get together. You typically have 2 volunteers from each team. one person is running the computer, one person is reading times to them. Ideally, those people are on opposite teams. And you've got two people checking the results after they're printed. And we'll get into that here in just a sec. And one of those two people who's doing the checking usually is also receiving the lane timer cards, putting them in the right order, making sure middle times are circled, and then hands them off to the person doing the reading. And we always swap around who's doing that. If you have to go watch your kids swim, if you're the computer operator and your kids are swimming, you'll get up and go watch them, and somebody else will take over while you're gone. It's not terribly important that one person does that whole thing. So before the meet, there's a scratch meeting. We'll go over scratches. I'll walk you through how scratches work. You should attend the scratch meeting. So there'll be before the meet starts, there'll be a scratch meeting. The ref runs the scratch meeting. It's attended by the coaches and the reps and the automation people. And what you want to do during the scratch meeting is let the ref decide if the scratches are valid. I never get involved in are there's valid scratches or not, because the rules are mildly complicated. Like if a kid scratches from one event, they have to scratch from all events, and I don't have time to check it all. I get too much going on. I'm assuming the ref is doing that work. So I just want to know the results of the scratch meeting. This kid is out in this event, in this lane, and this other kid is in for that event. And if it's a swim up, is it a valid swim up? Again, I leave that to the ref. They should be completely on top of that. But I just want to record what the scratches are. After you've gone to the scratch, oh, and I take a program with me for that. So I'm actually making notes on the program on who's scratched and who's in. And then after the scratch meeting's over, we'll take that program back to the computer and we'll enter the scratches, and I'll show you how to do that when we get to it. And I also like to update them on the lane timer sheets. So if there's a scratch, find that particular piece of paper, get the new kid's name on it. And so that means that you hold on to the lane timer sheets until after the scratch meeting and after you've updated them. And when you are ready, you have all the scratches done, then give them to the head timer to distribute them. A scratch up, to answer the question here in the chat, a scratch up is when a younger swimmer swims in an older age group. And there are all sorts of rules about it, about you have to have exhausted all of your eligible swimmers, and there's many rules about it, which is why I don't get into it. But you do need to know if they are a scratch up, and I'll show you where that's important. So then now the meet's ready to go. So typically the lane timer sheets will come in, one of the verifiers will get them, as I said, put them in order, lanes 1 through 6. It's super easy to, if those are out of order, to enter the wrong times by the wrong kid. So it's sort of important that they get that right. And then it should already be the case that the middle time is circled. If there are 3 watch times on the lane timer sheet, then the middle one should be circled, and that's the time you'll enter. If there are only 2 times, it's only 2 times because one of the timers didn't stop the watch in time or whatever the problem was, then you'll only have 2 times, and for those you average them. And if it's a 1/2 of a tenth of a second, you drop the 1/2 a tenth. So if it's 0.11 and 0.14, that would average out to 0.125. You drop that and make it 0.12. And so then once you have those times and the person has verified that they're the middle times, if the times match like 3, it's just a novelty, and we usually announce it because it's fun that the timer's got a triple, but it doesn't really mean anything. So if they're all 3 times the same, then obviously use the one time. If 2 of them are the same, use one of those 2. So then they're now in order for this event. and the middle ones are circled. You give it to the person who's doing the reading, and they will read off the times to the person who's doing the computer entry, the person sitting behind the keyboard. And you can use whatever system you want to enter those. I had some very draconian specific rules about how I liked times being read to me to minimize the errors. I wanted them to say 112.25. I did not want to say .25. I didn't want to, because if you say like 52, or if you say 15, I'm already typing the 5. By the time I realize it's 15, it's 15 instead of 50. So I'm sure I was unpleasant to work with, but we had fewer errors that way. So run it however you need to. So then once you've entered all the times for the event, if it's anything but freestyle, it's just 1 heat of each thing. If it's freestyle, it's 2 heats, and I'll show you how freestyle works with the 2 heats. But after you're done, you score that event, and there's a button for scoring. And then you print out the results. And we usually print out 2 copies of the results. 1 copy, well, so you print out the 2 copies of results, then you hand the results and the lane timer sheets back to the verifiers, the 2 verifiers, and one of them will reread the timesheets. I'll get to DQs. Yep. One of them will read the timesheets, and the other person will verify that those times are actually the ones that are entered, the ones that were entered. And there are often mistakes at this. So don't be shocked if you have to go back and correct something and reprint the results and recheck it all. And then once you verified it, you staple the lane timer sheets to one of the results sheets, and you save that. And that paperwork gets saved through the end of the season by the home team. And then the other sheet that you print out usually gets posted so you can see, so kids can see their results. And then when you're done, you back it up and export it, and I'll show you how all that works. And then you email the backup and the results file to the division automation coordinator. So it's the home team mails the meet backup and the exported results to the division automation coordinator. It's important that the results there contain the results for both teams. It's not uncommon for the results to only contain one team, and then you got to go search down. It's a big fire drill to get that corrected, and people are often on the way to the beach already. And so I'll make sure that the results files have both teams, and I'll show you how to do that. The default is that they have both teams. You have to go out of your way to make it only one team. The intra-squad B meets, we may have time for at the end, so remind me back. Remind me about that. If there are challenges to the times, that's the ref's job to handle. Your job is just to, whatever the ref says the time is, enter that time. You staple the lane timer sheets to the results, and you keep the lane timer sheets and the results together for all 50 events, and you keep that for the whole season. And so the division automation coordinator then takes the 3 emails he's gotten and uploads the results to the website. It's trivial. The hardest part of that job is making sure people send you the results. Sometimes you have to call them and say, hey, where are the results for this meet? And then mail them to you, and then you'll upload them, and there's really not much to it. The files are access files, but they're password protected, so you can't do anything with them with access, much to my chagrin. And all the files that you're getting are in zip files. And you'll see this in just a second, why that's important, because the software makes it very apparent that they're zip files. Unfortunately, you have to know about it. So let me show you how this all works in practice with Meet Manager. So on the website, there are these template files. You can have Meet Manager open and play along if you want. On the website, here, there's this 2023 automation training files. Those are the entries, rosters, and records that I'm going to be using. So you can load Meet Manager and play along if you want. So the two things you'll need for this are the AMeet backups, template files, and the automation training files if you want to play along. So when you fire up Meet Manager, it by default shows you up here what database it's using. It's always the last one you were using. Yeah, I always, about the, make sure you print numbers legibly. At least once a meet, I've got to go out and talk to the head timer and tell them to talk to somebody and write more clearly, because plenty of people don't write clearly. So we want to start week 1A. So to do that, we'll do file, restore, and we're going to load the AMeet template file that's on the website. And so I always use this last option, unzip, copy to a selected folder, and open the new database. And so you say, okay, and then you navigate to where these files are. So this is the week 1A template file with this wacky name, but it says week 1A 2023 in it. So this, what you're looking at here is the contents of that zip file that's on the website of the, that is the contents of this, the AMeet backups and templates. Those are these files here. So this file is in that zip file that's on the website. And so you open it, and it says, where do you want to copy it to? As much as I hate the default, I just always leave it because you can change where it opens to. There's a million settings in this program for where things are. I've given in to their wacky defaults here. So I'll let it put it in this /swim meets 8 folder. It'll say that it's the backup file it's loading for week 1A. And then it, ignore the screen, you won't see it. So then it opens the database, and now you'll notice that I'm up here on the title bar, I'm editing the week 1A database. And the first thing you want to do here is go to Setup, Meet Setup, and you can change the who the home team is. You can change the zip code. You can change the meet name if you want to. What you are not allowed to change is any of this date information. Do not change the start date. Do not change the end date. Do not change the age update. Don't change any of the dates. Even if you're in a rain situation and you're holding this meet on a different day, do not change these. Leave these as the original Saturday day when the meet was held, because it's the start date that we use to match this up and know that it's a week 1 file. We don't use the name of the database. We don't use the meet name. We don't use any of the stuff except that start date. So it's critical that you do not change that meet date. Okay, so we'll change the home name. It's North Chevy Chase is the home team. I'll talk about B meets and time trials in a second. Remind me if I don't get to it. And so we'll change we can change anything up here we want. Don't change any of these other buttons. And now we have to load the 4 files that were sent to us, at least the 4 files, the 2 rosters and the 2 entries files. And you do that by, I always load, it doesn't matter what order you load them in, but just for my sanity, I always load the rosters first. So you say import rosters only. I don't know if Karen might know this, if Team Unify still does the export is it entries as roster as entries thing?
It's hit or miss, honestly, with the updates that they've had coming out. So it's always best to just do that. Just bring it in as an entry file because it's gonna bring it in as a roster file anyway.
Right. So the issue there is that Team Unify used to, and maybe still does, when it exports the roster, it actually creates an entries file. And so you'll have to say, and the file name will say roster import as entries will be in the file name. So you'll know if this is going on when you look at that entry file or that roster file and it says import as entries. So if it says import as entries, you'll just select entries and it'll give you an error message at some point saying there are no actual entries in here. And you say, yeah, I know that. But with most of the time you'll have two rosters, a roster file and an entry file from the other team. So you'll import rosters only, and then you have to navigate to wherever the file is on your computer. I've got them over here, but they could be on a flash drive or they could be somewhere else, but you just have to navigate to them. So I've got Bethesda versus North Chevy Chase here. So I'm gonna enter the roster, I'm gonna load the roster for Bethesda. And because it's a zip file, all the programs export these things as zip files. So you select the roster file you want to import, you select open, and it tells you, hey, that's a zip file. I've unzipped it. And then these are the files in that zip file. So this is actually the entries file, but you have to go through the little dance of saying, yeah, I know it's a zip file, then select the one file that's in the zip file. And then when you enter it, it gives you some information on what you're going to import. You say, okay, and just select the default answers to all these questions. So import the competitor numbers, yes. Use LSC as part of the team match, yes. And so then it will tell you you've imported one team and there are 268 rosters, there are 268 athletes on the roster. And so that's all there is to importing those entries. And if you went and checked now and looked at what athletes have been loaded, you'll see that now I've loaded all the Bethesda athletes. So we know we've entered that roster. And then you do the exact same team with the other exact same thing with the other team's roster, except you have to re-navigate back to where the files are. And there, as I said, there are ways to change this, but usually you're gonna have to go navigate to where the other roster is. And it'll ask you all the same things. It'll say it's a zip file, select the thing in the zip file, answer yes and yes. It'll import the other team. And so now if I look at the list of athletes, I've got athletes from both teams. And if I look at the list of teams, I've got the two teams loaded. So now I've entered all the rosters. So that's good. And now we want to enter the entries. When you import the rosters, do you designate home versus visitor? No, it doesn't make a difference. And the same is true for entries. Doesn't matter. As you'll see right here. So then we import the entries. Again, you navigate to where the entry files are. And so I want to load the Bethesda entries. Again, it's a zip file, so it tells you what's in the zip file. Don't change any of this information, just say okay. It'll say, okay, I've loaded 72 athletes with 168 entries. And then you do the same thing for the other team's entries. Go find the file. And it's entries for Chevy Chase. And again, say yes. Open the file. Don't change any of this. And again, it's loaded 72 athletes. So at this point in the game, I have all the rosters, all the athletes, the teams are loaded, and the entries are loaded. So the next thing we have to do is set up the seating. So now you go to set up seating preferences. And this stuff is all online. There's a document online that goes through all these steps also. So I'm sort of rushing through this. You can either go back and watch the video again, or we've got some other set of videos that Barb Ship did for us that are on the automation website, or you can look at the other documents on the website that walk through this. And under seating preferences, you want to go to dual meets, and this is where you do the lane assignment. So there are a number of ways to do this. So Bethesda wanted the odd lanes, so you can drag Bethesda over to the odd lanes and NCC over to the even lanes. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is if you double click on these, it deletes them. The other way to do it is just double click over here and take turns. It fills in the next available lane. So that's how you get the teams into the odds versus even lanes. Don't change any of these settings down here. Just set up the odds and evens under the dual meets tab of seating preferences. Okay, so now you've loaded everything. You've loaded the 4 files and you set the odds versus even things, and you've set whatever meet name you want, and you've not changed any of the dates. So at this point in the game, you're ready to seed the meet. And seeding is to assign kids to lanes, and it's done by time. Oh, there's one more thing I should talk about first, which is relays. So it's quite often the case that there were no relay entries created. And there's explicitly a rule that says there do not have to be relay entries in the entry files that are exchanged, that the relays are always assumed to be present. So you want to go to the, again, that's the relays screen off the main menu. And you want to make sure that there are that each team has 2 entries for each of these relay events. And again, you can do that by dragging and dropping, but I just double click on these things and say create a Bethesda A team, and then create a Bethesda B team, and it defaults to A and B. Create NCC A team and then NCC B team. And you want to make sure that doesn't matter which order you do these in. You want to make sure that these are set up if they did not come in the entries file that you have. So again, it shows you the 4 relay events over here, and you just have to make sure that you've got an A and a B team for each team over here. Okay, so now we've got A and B teams for each of the 4 relay events. So now we can go and actually seed the event. And to seed it, seed the meet. So to seed the meet, you select the seeding tab. It will show you all of the, it'll show you the number of entries you have for each event. It's usually a good idea to check that you've got the correct number of entries here. On more than one occasion in the past, I've had teams submit an incorrect number of entries, and it was creating 2 heats for some of the things. And I didn't notice it until Saturday morning, and I had to reprint everything and get the corrected entries, and it was a total nightmare at the meet. So do yourself a favor and check that the number of entries is correct. So it should be, excuse me, no more than 6 entries for all of the individual events except freestyle, which should be no more than 12. And then the relays should have 4 each. And once you've verified that, you have to select all of the events you want seeded, which is all of the events. And you can do that here with the select all button. So that highlights and selects all of the events you want to seed, and then you say start seeding. And it goes through and it does its magic, and it says that it's seeded 50 events. I assume the All-Star standards are loaded to the templates. I assume they're updated for 2023. I don't think there were any. I do not think there were I know there were no changes for All-Star times this year. I do see one typo for the girls 15-18 free. Okay, I will check that. And we'll get the time trials at the end. So now we've seeded everything. So now, if you want to, you can go through and just double check things. You can look at the run screen. It'll show you event 1. It'll show you which kids are in which lanes, and it should always have the odd to even thing correct. In this case, NCC is in the evens, Bethesda's in the odds, and they're otherwise seeded by time. So that all looks good. The relays should show the evens and odd things again, and the A teams are in 3 and 4, and the B teams are in 2 and 5. So this all looks good. So the 2 things we want to do now are print out a meet program and print out the lane timer sheets. And to print out the meet program, it's under reports. Oops, wrong button. Reports, meet program. And typically, there's some number of these you're supposed to print out. It's in the green book, which I don't have handy. I might have a reference to it here. The green book says to print 21 meet programs, but I always print like 30 because people always want more meet programs than you print. The 30 number or the 21 or the 30 number is just for the officials. So that's for the ref, the reps, the coaches, the head timers will want them. So just the officials. So that number doesn't include anything for the parents or whatnot. We used to sell meet programs at the meet, so I'd print off some more for that, but I don't think anybody does that anymore. You can produce a PDF of the meet program, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, and post it to your website and have the parents print it themselves. I do need to import records first. Thank you. So I'm just going to show you here printing programs for the officials, not for the parents. Someone pointed out we want to import the records first, and you import records. There are a number of ways to do it, but one is import records. And then you say import, and you find the files. Oops, here. So the MCSL records are already loaded into the templates. If it changes during the season, I'll send out an email and I'll post the new records to the website, and I'll give you some instructions on how to load the records. But here I want to import the pool and the team records. So for the pool records, you click on the file and say import it. And so that's created this set of records here. And this flag this is the thing that shows up on the results if someone breaks this record. So you can use like a plus sign here. Oops. Right, you can use like a plus sign here. I would not use a star because All Stars uses a star, but really any character here. A pull record can be set by either team, so you leave the team as --. And we usually don't allow exhibitions for our pull records, but that's really up to you. There are no MCS rules about pull records or team records because they don't get uploaded to our website, so we don't really care what you do here. And then I'll import the team records. And if I had the records for the other team, I'd do the same thing, but I don't have a simulated file for them. And so enter something for them, and that'll be like exclamation. And this one can, and this one can only be set by the one team. Since this is the NCC team records, I'll say only allow NCC kids to set those records, and again, don't allow exhibitions. And then, as I said, if you had the other team's records file, you'd upload those too. So that's records. And then back to printing the meet program. Select meet program. You want to include the records. These should all be set up correctly, but you can include, I guess, time standards is all-star times. If you want to include those, select those. By default, all the ones for, I'll get back to the records question in just a sec. The programs that we give out to the officials and the coaches and the reps, those are in triple column format. I usually print one in double column format that I hand to the announcer because otherwise some of the names get cut off. And I like the announcer to have the kid's whole name. So once you've decided what you want in the meet program, you select all the events. And then you say create report. And so now it's got the MCSL records, the all-star times, the pool and the team records. And it's a good idea at this point to go through and check that everyone's in the odds and even lanes like you expect, and that they're the correct number of heats for all the events. And so you can go to the next page here. You can page through this whole thing and check them all. And I think it's usually 5 pages long. And once you've decided that this looks good, then we'll go ahead and print it. And you print by selecting the printer icon. Oops, and it's now printing behind me. If you use this printer button, so this is the just print one copy button. This printer icon is the pull up the printer menu, and I can select how many I want to print.
There may
Yes.
be instances where you have to reseed for something, error came in, something was wrong, lanes are wrong, whatever. After you have gone to print, at no point should you reseed. The issue is that Meet Manager counts ties, athletes entered with the same time, and no times as exactly the same, and will randomly assign those lanes. So if you seed it one way and then reseed it again, it will not be the same, guaranteed. So if you've
Right.
already gone to print, do not reseed without reprinting everything again, because your copies will not be the same. And you'll run into issues where someone will have one version and someone else will have the other. So
Yeah,
if you've already gone to print, do not reseed unless you are going to reprint everything and throw out everything you've already done.
right. Excellent point. There are occasions where the rule is that if both coaches or both reps, I think, agree on a change to be made before the meet starts, that you can make a change to the entries. Most times people won't let you do this, but it's technically possible that a change could be made. And as Karen said, if you're going to do that, you've got to start from scratch. You've got to make whatever change you're going to make, and then throw away all the printed copies you've got, throw away the lane timer sheets, and reprint everything if you're going to reseed. So that's how you do the entries. If you want to create a PDF of this, you select this button here, the Export Report button, and then you can say, I want to create a PDF, and it will create a PDF file. You can put that wherever you want. And then it will create the PDF file for you. So there's a PDF file created on your hard drive that you can then go ahead and upload to your website or mail out to the parents or whatever it is you want to do. Back to the Meet Manager, and then you can also, as I said, I print out one double for the announcer. That's the same process. Print the 2 copies, print the 2 column version of it. And I think that's like 7 or 8 pages long. Okay, so we've printed the entries. I mean, we printed the meet program, so now we need to print the lane timer sheets. And so that's reports, lane timer sheets. And again, you just select all the events that you want to print. The one trick here is that we use, you want to select this, two events or lanes per page. I guess I didn't make that the default. So you want to make sure you select 2 events or lanes per page.
And also select event, then lane.
Right, and you want to select event then lane, which I do not see. Event then lane. So these are the two settings you want. You want 2 events or lanes per page, and event then lane. And so what we always do is we print the 2 per page, and then we cut it in half, and you've got the 2 lanes that are you've got one set, a half page for each lane timer sheet.
So you want to print 2 lanes at a time. So instead of lanes
Right.
1 through 10, do lanes 1 and 2,
Right.
and then
So
that'll be top half, bottom half for cutting.
Right. So the way to do that is to print lanes 1 through 2 first. And so event 1, lane 1 will be on the top, and event 1, lane 2 will be on the bottom. And then if you go to the next page, it's event 2, lane 1, event 2, lane 2. So if you print all these out, stack them up, and then cut them in half, either with a paper cutter or a pair of scissors, then you'll have a pile of lane 1 pages and a pile of lane 2 pages. And then you repeat the same thing, except print lanes 3 and 4. And for reasons unknown, it prints lane 4 at the top and lane 3 at the bottom. Just be cognizant that it does that. And then you print lane 5 and lane 6, same way. So when you're done with that, you've printed 3 times. You've printed lanes 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6. You've cut them in half, put rubber bands around them to keep all the lanes together. Yeah, you can print half pages too. I think someone points out that you can actually, some printers allow you to print half pages of paper, but then you've got to cut them in half in advance, and sort of its own hassle. I used to do that all the time. Bob Hinkie always used to print them out and then take them out to his table saw and cut them in half. How he did not have a paper cutter. I'll get to the DQ codes question in just a second. And the last thing you need to do, as I said, is to back this up. So you want to say backup, defaults to wherever the current database is. Just say okay, and it will create a backup file. And if we go back and look at file manager, so it's created this backup file. So this is the backup of the meet I just created. Mail that to the other team, and then you're done for the evening. You can shut the computer off and go to bed. Yeah, you can get Staples or Kinko's will also cut paper in half if you want. If you're knock yourself out if your printer will print half pages. So someone mentioned DQ codes. Since MCSL doesn't use we don't use the DQ codes. We don't define what they are. You don't upload them to the website. So we don't really care about what the DQ codes are. Somebody here points out, Jeff in the comments says you want to use the November 13 USAS DQ codes. Those match most closely what MCSL does, and that may be true. But since we don't use them, you're really on your own with DQ codes. So shut the computer down, send the backup to the other team, and now you're ready for Saturday morning. So on Saturday morning, start at the computer again, make sure you're still in week 1A. You'll want to be on the run screen most of the day. This is how you run the meet. So as I said, the first thing we'll do is have the scratch meeting. The scratch meeting, there's some official time it's supposed to be, but you know, it's always right before the meet starts, and you're very rushed once you get the. We'll talk about Relay Carnival later. Remind me. And so now it's the events all show is seated because you seated them last night, and now you've got scratches. So say we've got a scratch in event 1. So to enter the scratches, you select the adjust button. And so now it will show who all the kids are in each, who who are in the event. So this is as it's currently seated. And say this kid in lane 2 has been scratched. So you so to remove someone from here, you can just double click on them, and they go away. It asks you, make sure you want to scratch this person. You say yes, and then to show who the replacements are, you select this button, Show Eligible Athletes. And so these are the kids who are eligible to swim in this event. And since we scratched a North Chevy Chase team, you can also say, just show me the North Chevy Chase kids if you want. And say, you know, this kid's going in. You just double click on them, and they show up here. And they won't have a seat time. They'll be in the same lane as the kid you scratched out. Mentioned swim ups earlier. If this Bethesda kid was, well, this is a bad event for swim ups, right? But if you are doing swim ups, if the kid is a swim up who is being entered in, you have to say, show eligible athletes plus swim ups. So it'll show the younger kids that you can select from. And these are now Bethesda. It's a Bethesda scratch. And we can enter this kid in. And then when you close this, it'll ask you if you want to save it. This is pretty much the only place in Meet Manager where you have to say, yes, I want to save something. Normally it just saves everything as you type. So now we've got the, so we've gone through and we do that same process for all of the swim ups. Sometimes a ref will want you to reprint it after you've entered all of the scratches, rather. The ref will want a clean copy with the scratches on it. So if they want that, you can reprint that at this point. And again, you can get to the reports screen right from the run screen. So again, just run meet program, create a meet program, and print it. Okay, so now we're ready to start the meet. We've done all of the setup. We've done the scratches. We're ready to start the meet. So the meet will be swum, and then you'll get the lane timer sheet cards in. Someone will sort them, check the middle times, and we're now going to actually enter the times. So in the finals time column, you just enter the times. You don't need to enter any punctuation here. If this time is 1:35, 52, you just type the time in as 1:35:52, hit enter, and go to the next line. And so then we'll enter the times. And if there's a DQ, then you select, you'll get the DQ card will come in. Hopefully it'll happen before you score it. It often doesn't, but for a meet in particular, you can usually tell if there's going to be a DQ because there's a big pause in the meet. And everyone will be abuzz that there's a DQ when you'll get the DQ card. The only thing you really need to get correct is the right kid. So make sure the lane's correct. The lane and heat match what the DQ card says. I don't know if the DQ cards have the kid's name on them these days. We talked about changing it, but at least they didn't used to have the kids' names on them, so you couldn't actually check this. But trust me, if you get this wrong, someone will tell you. And you can, if you want, select the DQ code. As I said, there's no exact match between these and what MCS rules are, so find the closest one. And so say it's no touch on turn. And you just select the right DQ code. It's entirely optional. It's sort of nice because it prints it out on the results. But so now we've entered all the times, we've done the DQs as needed, and then we say score. So you select score, and it will tell you there was a tie here. There's you know, who's in first, second, third place, how many points they got. And then you will print this, and it by default prints 2 copies of it. So you print the 2 copies, you will use one of them, the people will verify the times against. Again, you'll verify the lane timer sheets against the entries here, make sure there are no mistakes. And then you're done with that event. If there are mistakes that were made, then you can go back through and fix the time, and then you hit score again, and it will print out the corrected results. I don't know if this is in my imagination or if it's still a thing, but it used to be the case that the last event you scored was the score of the meet. So if you are going to make a change to anything that's a past event at the end of the meet, then go back and make sure that you've scored event 50 last, so it'll have the correct score. Anyway, I always score event 50 last is my rule. Then I don't have to worry about if I'm doing it right or not. And so that's all there is to it. Then you go to the next event and do the same thing. Enter the times, select score. Shows you the times, print it, verify it, move on to the next one. For freestyle, there are 2 heats. So if you can see right here, it says this is heat 1. So swim the slowest one first. The lane timer sheets will have lane 1 will have heat 1, then heat 2 on it. So you end up going through the lane timer sheets twice. The first time you go through them, you read the heat 1 times, and then the second time through, you read the heat 2 times and enter them. But you won't get those lane timer sheets until after the second heat has been swum. So
For those freestyle events where you're looking at more than one heat for whatever, there's a checkbox along the top there that says enter results by lane.
right.
That might make it easier. So then you're entering both heats for lane 1, both heats for lane 2.
Right.
If you look there in the middle, it changed your heats, heat 1, heat 2 to lane 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you have your 2 heats down below. Or then you can enter both of those, uncheck that box to go back, and then print your results to take a look and see how they match up correctly.
Right. So as Karen said, so now that I'm in enter results by lane, then down here I've got 6 lanes. If I don't have this checked, I've got the 2 heats down here. So enter it whichever way makes it easier for you to enter it. And for my quick example, so I can blast through it here, we'll do it this way. And then if I wanted to move to the next heat or the next lane, if I'm in the other mode, click over here on the other heat and enter the times again. And then again, so now I've got both of them entered, and you can go back and forth and get the correct heat. If there's a DQ, make sure you've got the correct heat in addition to the correct lane. And again, hit score when you're done. Okay, so it says, I'm assuming that you will receive the results one event at a time, but the lane timer sheets won't be sorted. Yeah, right, but double check that you're getting the right ones and the right times. We definitely, yeah, some people have the runners sort them, but it's always good to double check because I've had plenty of runners because often the runners are kids and plenty of people make mistakes on the whole thing. So you can't, it's good to check more than once. And again, so now we've got the kids, all 12 here for this event, and we can print and verify the results. And you'll keep doing that until the end of the meet. you might want to at halftime compute a score to announce the halftime score. You can do that by report scores. You can select all the events. It'll only select the ones that have been scored. So at halftime, it'll only be through event 26 or whatever it is. And you can say select all, create report. It'll give you the running score. And you can have the announcer announce that if you want. And the same thing at the end of the meet. After you're sure everything's right. And usually I have I verify the score with the referee before I announce it, because the referee usually keeps track of what they think the running score is, and they'll want to come over and verify the DQs and whatnot. But so after the ref has sort of signed off on the whole thing, I'll print out the final score and announce it. And the one other report you might want to print is All-Star Times. And that is under exceptions report. So you want to select all events, select the all-star time standards, and then you want to say under this tab, faster than or equal to the time standard. Unfortunately, you can't make that the default. So you have under standards qualifying, you have to select faster than or equal to, select the time standard, select all events, and then create the report. And it'll produce a report of all the all-star times. We've also been instructed to show the results to each code. Yeah, well, I've never done that, but whatever everyone's agreed to, I'm willing to go along with. And those are the all-star times for this. So I think that's it in terms of running the meet until we get to the final steps. So then when you're done, you have the final score. You're reasonably sure everything is fine, pending any. The all-star times are already in the meet templates, so you don't have to worry about them. They're already all preloaded. So at the end, you want to, sometimes you want to print out the results. Some teams like to have hard copies of the results. Again, it's just results, select all, create report. And so this will be the printed results of every event that's been swum. We only entered 3 here. And if you want to restrict it to a single team, you could say, is that here?
No, splits order selected teams, that third
There
tab
you
down
go.
there,
Thank
you
you.
can select
Yeah.
your team.
Right, so you can say, I only want to print the Bethesda results if you want. And the results would only show the Bethesda swimmers. So now you want to produce the 2 files that need to be produced when you're done. One is the backup of the meet. And this is the same process we used the night before to print the backups, to produce the backup that we mailed to the other team. So create the backup, say yes, and it will have, so we see back over here, it'll create another backup file. So this one is -02 because the one we did the previous night is -01. So you want to make sure you're getting the most recent backup file.
And if you save it, yeah, so if you save it on your flash drive once and you save it on your computer once, they could both be labeled 01 because it only numbers it for the one in that area.
Right.
Correct. So make sure, make sure you look at the time and you're getting the most recent one.
Right. So the 2 things you want to produce are this backup file and then the results file. So the results file is export results for swim manager or swims. So this is the results file. Don't change anything here. In particular, don't select just one of the teams. So leave it like this. The results will contain both the teams. Oh, relay athlete names. Yeah, that's a good one. I forgot that. Thank you. So you just produce the results file. Normally it won't complain that there are events that aren't done because you'll have completed them all. And it will have written them all out. And if we go back and look over here, that's this meet results file that it's produced. So the two files you will need when you're done with this are the results file and the backup file. You want to send the results file to the other team. And you want to send both the results file and the backup to your division automation coordinator if you're the home team. And when you send this to the division automation coordinator, you want to send the results file, the backup file, and in the body of the message, write the score of the meet. That way, when they upload it to the website, they can double check that the website computes the same score that you thought was being scored and no events got left out or anything like that. And then you're done. You will want to load those results into your team management software. There's a function in the team management software to do that. Someone pointed out that I had not entered the relay athletes. That was a good point. So if in a relay event, you want to select the event. We're back on the run screen here. Select the event and then select relay names. And it'll say, so you select which team you're doing. So we're doing the A team for BCC, and it'll show just the eligible athletes over here. And again, if there's swim ups, say show swim ups. They're typically not swim ups for relays, but it's conceivably possible. And then you just select the kids. And if you double click on them, it takes them in order. If you've got them over here and they're in the wrong order, you can drag and drop them around to make them correct. Or if one's wrong, you can double click on it and they go away. You can select a different kid. And so just do that for each of the events. For each of the, and so now I'm doing NCCB, and so it's already got the A ones highlighted, and so it'll say this kid's now in the B one. And so that's how you enter the relay athletes. And
There's also that relays menu where if the
Right.
entry file didn't come with your relays and you added relay entries in, you can
Right.
also enter relay names through that menu.
Right. So on this relays menu I showed you earlier where I created the teams, you can also set the relay athletes here. Typically, I do it on from the run screen because you often do not know who the relay entries are until you get that card. The card you get with the results is the official thing. So the answer to that last question is the relay names come in on the relay cards, the tan, I think, relay cards that come in. Those are the official names. Those are the ones you want to make sure you've got in the database. Labels. Thank you for reminding me about labels. So for labels, as you're running the meet and we've scored some events, we want to print out labels. You go to labels, award labels, and then you can select which events you want to print labels for. So you select those events and say create labels. And so then it produces the list of labels, it produces the labels and you can print them here. Labels are kind of a hassle to keep track of which ones you've already printed. And you can tell it which ones you've printed here. The chances of me remembering that are very small, but I can't tell you how many times I've had to go back and ask the labels. So it keeps track of which ones you've printed only if you click on the printed column over here. But usually I forget. So I also write down on a piece of paper to try to remember which ones I've printed. You can enter the relay teams, the kids on the relay teams anytime you want. But since the official version is the version that comes in on the cards, I always wait till I get the cards. But you can do them in advance, and sometimes they'll come in on the entries. And if they come in on the entries, then you have to verify them when you get the card to make sure they're still correct. And if they're not, you have to adjust them there. Okay. So I think that's it for running a dual meet. Unless someone can think of something I've forgotten. So let's talk real quickly about time trials. There's a time trials template. So just like all the others, you say restore, unzip, copy to a selected folder and open it. And so time trials, select the time trials template. And so you want to import if your coach has created an entries file for time trials, you can import your roster here. Come on. Just like you import any roster. Oops, get that rosters file. So now I've got all the rosters. I've got all the events. There's 46 events in the time trials template. Time trials are not an official MCSL meet. So if you want to, there's no rule that says you have to run this like you run an A meet. Doesn't have to be the same events. It doesn't make any sense not to, but there's no particular rule that says you have to do this like an A meet. So it's got all the 46 events, the individual events, preloaded in it. If you really feel like you need to, you can change that. We don't care because you never upload these results to MCSL. For the seating preferences, let's see. No. Right, so it doesn't have strict assignment. So I believe this setting is already correct. Since there's only one team, you don't want to use this is basically saying don't use these lane assignments. Which I think is correct. If your coach has actually prepared entries for time trials, you can import the entries. I'm going to use that same entries file I was using for the A meet. And then when you seed it, same thing, select all, start seeding. And if we look at the run screen, it's just assigned, it's used all the lanes, evens and odds. So that's how you do time trials. Just use the time trials template, import your entries, import your roster and your entries. Especially for time trials and depending how you're doing B meets, there will be kids that are swimming that you don't have entry files for. And if you get a lane timer sheet with a handwritten kid's name on it in a B meet or time trials, you can just go in here and add them. And I had a time for this kid, and he'll show up, and you can enter a time for him. And if you get the lanes wrong, it doesn't really matter because nobody cares. Nobody cares if the lanes are correct. Just make sure you get the right time by the right kid. Is time trials the same as an all-comers meet? Yes, basically. Whoever the coach wants to let swim at time trials can swim at time trials. The MCSL records file, I wouldn't worry about it. All the templates come with the current records in them, assuming they're correct. if there is a record broken during the season, I'll send out an email to the division automation coordinators and tell them how to get the new file, and they can tell it to all the automation people. There'll be instructions on how to load those files. But it's basically the same thing you've seen, just importing a new records file. I use an old time trial template. Is that okay? Yeah. Again, we don't really care what you use. The time trials, you can set the date on it to anything you want. You can. The only deal is for time trials is you need to export those, import into your team management software. As long as you can do that, then you're good. Yeah, how to change if there's 7. Right. So okay, so we're in time trials, and we need to. So we've got 6 kids in it. We had a heat. Now we've got a 7th kid. Nobody wants to swim it like this, so what you would do is just drag and drop. And if you want to swim 3 and 4 instead of 6 and 1, you just drag and drop them and put them wherever you want. And when you exit this, you can either click save, or I just always exit and say yes, save that. And so now we've got 2 heats, one with 4 kids and one with 3 kids. I'm not going to show you how to combine events, no, because I refuse to be involved in that. It's a disaster and a recipe for getting boys in the girls team records file and everything else. I have never seen it done successfully. Karen, I'm sure, has more skills at it than I have, but I've seen this messed up more often than I've seen it done correctly.
So if you're going to swim combined events, don't actually combine them in your meet database. The easiest way is to keep the girls in the girls event, boys in the boys event, and then on your heat sheet, either draw a box in a Word file, draw a box with a marker, figure out how you do it so that then you change it. Girls are in lanes 1 through 3, boys are in 4, 5, 6. Don't actually physically combine your events. It just keeps everything separate easier. That's how we do it when we run UC swimming combined gender events, et cetera, et cetera. Easiest way to just keep it that way. Keep your people where they're supposed to be. If you need to swap heats in your adjust menus, other than heat 1 is all girls and heat 2 is that combined boys girls heat, and then the next heat is the boys full heat. However you want to do it, mark it on your heat sheet. When you make your copies, do it that way.
Right.
Best way, do not actually physically combine the events in Meet Manager.
Right, because I've been the victim of that before. So as long as you get a piece of paper that has a kid's name and a time on it, and you know if it's a boy or a girl, and you know which event they were swimming, which event that time was for, and you can enter it correctly in the database here in Meet Manager, that's what you want to do. How they actually swam that in the pool, I don't care. They could all swim at once. They could swim 1 kid per heat all afternoon. I don't care. I just want to get a piece of paper that has kids' names, what event it was, and what their time is. So that's what you want to do. If you run time trials off index cards, then you can change the events to be 12 lanes per course. Right. Yeah, that is true. If you're not going to precede the event, then you can go in and there's a setting somewhere that says how many lanes your pool has. You can say I've got 12 lanes. It'll show all 12 here, and it's somewhat easier to enter 12 times at once instead of multiple heats of 6. You just got to make sure you're keeping track of getting the right number by the right kid. So whatever makes that easiest to do. Could the time trials template be used for an intra-squad B meet? Yeah, if you're saying that, yeah, I mean, time trials is basically a 1-team meet. So yes, you could do that. So let me briefly talk about Relay Carnival. Relay Carnival has its own template, which we will restore using the same process we do all the time, and that is the Division Relay event. Now, the deal with Relay Carnival is that the teams are already entered. So there are 6 teams, they're already entered in here. All you have to do is go in here and for each team, put in the right team abbreviation and team name. So this order has to be the same as the teams are listed in the division assignment spreadsheet. So whoever finished first, whoever is placed first in that division is team 1, whoever is second is team 2. And so you can go through here and edit these. So if team 1 is NCC, and then team 2 is Rock Creek. So this is literally, that's all the setup you have to do for Relay Carnival, because if you go and look at the run screen, it's already preceded and everybody's in their right lane. And then when you go to the next event, everybody shifts over by 1 lane. So this is all preceded. You don't have to do anything except enter the team names. You do, of course, have to enter all the relay athlete names. And again, the official names are the ones that are on the cards that come in after the event. What I always try to do is tell all the coaches in the division, hey, could you give me your entries in advance? I swear I won't tell them to anybody else, but I want to get a jump on entering them all. And usually that morning you can go around to the coaches and collect the entries and you can pre-enter them all here. And it's easiest to do if like if the North Chevy Chase person, oops, not scratch, say relay names. If the North Chevy Chase person is going to enter, no, I didn't enter you'll go through and enter all the, you'll import all the rosters again. But you will not import entries because, as I said, it's preceded. So we'll enter all the rosters. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's easiest if the person who's familiar with the relay name, with the swimmers' names, does the enters the relay name. So, like, I'm familiar with all these kids' names. Well, actually, all these kids are made up, but ideally, I'd know all the kids' names, and I could go through and quickly enter the relays for each event that NCC is in. So I try to get that done in advance, and then you double check it when you get the relay cards. Now, there's no easier way than manually entering them all. And then divisionals is the only other event type that you'll have to deal with. And it's basically the same as looking for store. We'll select the divisionals template. And the only deal is here that's different is you have to import 6 rosters and 6 entries. Ugh. Rosters only. So instead of doing this 2 times, you'll do it 6 times. The seating in here is a little bit different because you don't assign lanes. It's oops. It's already set up, but you don't do the lane assignments above, so it seats only based on time. So that's really all there is to relay to divisionals. The seating, it's the same as a B meet, except you'll enter 6 entries, 6 rosters, and the seating is done strictly by time, not by team lane assignments. If you're the division automation coordinator, the only additional thing you have to do is upload the results. And so if you're logged in as the division automation coordinator, you see this upload results button. And literally all you have to do is here is select the results files that people have sent you. And upload them, which I'm not going to do because that would screw up the database. But literally that's all you have to do is get those files from people and upload them. So I'm imploring someone from Division B to volunteer to be to be division automation coordinator, because otherwise someone who's probably me is going to have to end up doing all that work, and I've got enough things going on Saturdays that I don't need to be uploading. I don't need to be tracking down people to send me results, which is really the division automation coordinator's primary job, as far as I'm concerned, is making sure you got all 3 files. As division automation coordinator, they'll send you the backups and the results file. All you do is upload the results files, but keep the backups in case we need it. If there's a protest, we'll need the backup file. If there's some screw up with the results not being entered correctly or something, we'll need the backup file. So what we usually ask the division automation coordinators to do is, after you've uploaded the results, and as someone points out here in the chat, automation coordinator, pretty easy. Division B, I'm talking to you, is to email automation at MCSL and send us the 3 backup files that you've collected. So we'll keep track of them. You don't have to. We'll have the back in case there's a protest or something. We'll have the backups. We won't need to go back to you. And I feel that is all you need to know. Is it on your website? It's in the handbook, which is on the website. Send me email if you're interested in any details on how division automation coordinator works. So any more questions? I mean, feel free to actually ask them with a microphone if you don't want to type them in. Okay, thanks, Dan. I would appreciate it. I'm more than happy to work with whoever wants to be Division B's automation coordinator. Just send me some email. It is really simple. If you can just talk to the other teams and get them to send you the files, that's really the hard part about the whole thing. You can stay around and talk to Karen about Team Unify. There you go, resume builder for the team automation coordinator. Good one. When I upload this to YouTube, I'll put a link to the recording of it on the automation page on the MCSL. Never too late to pad your resume. Don't say that. I'll put a link on the automation webpage when I upload the recording, assuming I haven't screwed it up. But there is a copy of last year's, which is basically the same information. Okay, well, there being no more questions, I think we can call it an evening. Go to mcsl.org. On the left side, there's a button that says automation support. That's the automation webpage. Thanks, Tom and Karen, for your support again. Karen is going above and beyond because she doesn't have an MCSL swimmer, but is still helping us out here. So I appreciate it very much. Okay, I think that's it. All right, thanks everybody. And reach out to automation at MCSL if you have any questions. We're happy to help you.
Yeah, I get those too. So if you have specific team questions, just shoot me an email. I'll put my email address in the chat down there. It's just my first name dot last name @gmail.com. So if anybody has any questions specifically about team management side of things,
If somebody wants to stick around and ask some team management questions. So if you go ahead and ask whoever had the team unify, I think it was question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Eric, Eric, you can stop the recording now, and then we
Okay.
can just
Thanks.
talk
Do.
outside.
Stop